Welcome to Doors to Hope and Healing, an inside look at the many facets of work that is happening at the Department of Children and Families, between our staff, the families we serve, and our community partners. My name is Jaqueline Ford. I have had the honor of working for the department for almost 30 years. And although I may be familiar with many of the topics we bring to you, I have invited experts in those fields to help us dispel the myths and misconceptions that can often be barriers to our work. Join us as we open our doors and invite you to have a seat at our table. Welcome to Doors to Hope and Healing. My name is Jaqueline Ford, and I'll be your host today. We're honored to welcome a woman whose life journey has come full circle. From surviving system involvement to reshaping that very system with her wisdom, with her empathy, and with her strength. Samaris Rose is a mother, an advocate, and a visionary. Her lived experience is not just a story of resilience, but a blueprint for how we can do better, how we can listen, how we can lead with love and make lasting changes. Let's open the door to her journey. Samaris Rose, it's so nice to have you back on Doors to Hope and Healing.
Thank you.
It is a pleasure to have you here. And today we've invited you to come on to our show because you're now an employee of the Department of Children and Families. You're now my colleague from having lived experience with us many years ago to now having a seat at the table to share your input and to really have people see things through your vision, through your experiences. So thank you for being here. Let's start by telling our viewers, what is your role with the Department of Children and Families?
Yeah, so my role is a parent with lived expertise consultant.
Wow, fancy title. That's wonderful. I'd like to begin with a quote that you had shared. And you said, "I saw it as clear as day. I envisioned this position and what I would be doing." What was that moment like? What exactly was your vision?
Yeah, so that was a surreal moment. I envisioned like sitting at a desk, looking over policies and advising leadership and, reaching out to families and hearing their concerns and even supporting case managers. And it has come to full fruition. It's From like day one, I've been hitting the ground running.
Oh, that's wonderful. You went on to say that you envisioned, like you said, reviewing cases, talking to social workers, building an advisory board. It was so specific. Why do you think that clarity came to you in the way that it did? What helped for that, almost that pivotal moment to have that opportunity?
Yeah, so it was definitely, for me, the fact that I had once walked in that path of being judged and dismissed by DCF, so I knew what was missing, but I also knew what was needed. So it was a moment for me to really be able to make sure that families' voices were centered.
So you walked into the 10th floor and you're on the commissioner's floor, right? Where your office, your desk is there.
They call it the suite.
The suite. So you took the elevator to the suite. What was that like walking in? You were a nervous wreck, I'm sure.
I was a nervous wreck. Although I have done some work with them in the past, it was very different because now I was being interviewed for a position that they have never had before. So for me, it was like, oh my goodness, I'm really here. And then there was that other voice like, what are you doing here? And then it was that thing like, you know what? You deserve to be here. Your voice is the voice that needs to be at the table because it's your story and the stories of countless other families that's going to bring real change.
So when you had heard about this position, what was the job spec? What was it that you heard about this position that you felt, I could do this?
Yeah, so remember, I had this vision prior to the position coming out. So actually, I was preparing for a conference in D.C., and Ken Meisegland and myself were on the phone going through logistics, and all of a sudden, this whole vision came before me. And the next day, I received the email that went around statewide, and I was reading this, and I'm saying to myself, this can't be happening. I remember reaching out to my mother and explaining to her what had just happened. And she wasn't surprised. She's like, that's how God works. It was her words that I never forget. And even so, I wasn't really sure if I wanted to apply to the position, for the position or not, because I really wasn't sure if they really wanted my voice at the table, or was this a cover up to make it seem like we're doing what we think is best, right? But 2 weeks in, it is definitely not a cover up.
You're doing the work.
I'm doing the work.
Yeah. So you were interviewed and then you received the job. You received the call.
Yes.
And you were offered the job, and I think you said you cried.
Yeah.
What was that when you received the call? What was that moment like for you?
So I received the call, and I remember running to a coworker's office, because it was like open space where I was working at the time. So the first office I seen, I remember going in there, and I'm listening to Ken tell me about, we went through this process and that process. Like, he didn't just get to the point, which made it even worse for me. But eventually he said, and we decided that, you were the best candidate. And I remember crying, like real tears. And I remember my coworker looking at me. I didn't know she can hear him. So she heard the whole conversation.
Give me goosebumps.
Yeah, and she looked at me and she said, "This is for you." And I'm so happy for you. And I was like, "You heard that conversation?" Because he had said to me, "We're gonna announce it. Just hold off on telling anyone." I'm in this office with a coworker, and I'm like, "You can't say nothing," because she heard everything. But I remember crying, and I was actually happy that I was in a space where she can remind me that this is what you need to do. This is the purpose, and you need to drive it all the way.
And you deserved it.
Yeah.
You deserved that call and to be offered that position. Your journey with DCF began not as an employee, but as a young mom who was involved with the system. I mean, many years ago. You had your first son when you were just a teenager, 15 years old.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about those early years and what it was like balancing school as a teenager and raising this child?
Yeah, I was definitely growing fast in adulthood. I had a very supportive mother and family, but they were really like strict. Like, you had this baby, you're gonna do what you have to do for this baby. And the only time my mother would babysit was if I was going to school or work. Outside of that, it was like no free time for me. But it was a scary in the same time because there's no manual to being a parent, right? We learn as we go, and I did what I thought was best with what I had and made it a survival with love every day situation for me. So it was tough, but I maintained.
You grew up fast, I'm sure.
Yeah.
At that age. You've spoken about your pain when your children were removed from you after an injury, and you said, "I did not believe it." And it captures so much shock that you had that your children were removed. What do you want professionals to know today about what it feels like from that birth mom perspective?
So, for me, it's not every parent, right, is just making bad decisions just because. Some things are accidental, right? And some things are just not true. But remember, every case, there's a family behind that case that is shattering every single day.
Yeah, and it brings that realness, that human, you walk that walk.
Yes.
We at DCF are doing our best to help strengthen our families, but you walk that walk, so you have that experience. You had said at one point that you hated us, right? You hated DCF because of what, power that the agency has and how you were feeling through that process. How did you turn that pain, because anger and dislike is pain. How did you turn that pain into purpose?
Yeah, so for me, You know, in the moments that I was going through what I was going through with DCF, I felt powerless in that moment. And, you know, as I got older and grew stronger, I had two choices: to either turn that pain into a passion, or either to stay stuck in that moment and not grow, but also watch other families go through the very thing that I went through that was disturbing, heartbreaking. Like I remember it like it was yesterday, and it was 20 something years ago. So I decided to take the pain and make it my purpose and advocate and do everything that I can for other families. And I would say it's winning today. This position has made me realize that it was worth it.
That it was worth it. So what did you do? What position, you know, you said you're an advocate and you turned that into a passion. What did you do in those years before we found you to have this role that you have with our department?
Yeah, so I made it my business to be at every table possible. I didn't get invited. I invited myself. I created my own tables and went into spaces where people would not have imagined, because people looked at me not knowing that I had a story behind this great person that people would see. Like I was always told, oh, you're so great, you're this, you're that. And many thought I was privileged because my mother worked hard to give me and my brother the best of the best. And I was a young mom, and I can't say I struggled. I can't say that our lights got turned off or, you know, we didn't have food, because my mother made sure to do what she had to do. So people looked at me like, oh, you know, she's privileged and got everything so easy. But behind all of that was a story that I had within myself that I held until it was the right time to actually share it. So I went to every table. I listened and I took notes of who was at the table. I watched to see if people were really doing what they say they were going to do for young people and families and those in their community. And when they didn't, I found myself being so vocal about it and calling them out about it and not feeling bad about it either, right? So after doing that for so long, that's how I really ran into DCF. People started calling me like, oh, we need you to come here. And sometimes I felt like they were calling me because they wanted to be the vocal individual, but was a little scared because of their position, whatever. So I felt like I was kind of being used in some points, right? But I also knew that it was helping me build the networks that got me to where I am today. So I walked into those spaces unapologetic, and I did not hold my peace. I spoke my piece, and yeah, it was a great thing. It felt good afterwards too.
And you became respected for that.
Yes.
And at what point did you start your nonprofit?
Yep. So I started my nonprofit in 2017, and I started it because I realized that being at these tables, there was so much to offer families, young people. And people were saying, oh, we don't have this, we don't have that, we need this, we need, and the fact of the matter was it was there, but no one was advertising it. No one was talking about it. No one was holding them accountable. But everybody was coming to me because they knew I was in every space possible, asking me for solutions to problems and resources to support their families. And I decided, you know what? This is a real thing. So I created Just Ask Sammy. And it was just to provide resources and support to families while holding organizations accountable to make sure that our families are centered in everything, not just because you're going through something or something dramatic has happened in your life that you should be looked down on, but we should support you through that.
So it's like a navigation tool,
That's
helping
exactly
families
what it is.
navigate through a very complicated,
Yep.
a complicated system. So years later, your third son had a similar experience, but at this time, the outcome was different. How did that validation feel for you after what you had gone through with your first child?
But let me be clear, I hated DCF, so that third baby, I didn't call DCF, I didn't tell a soul but the doctor. There was one pediatrician that knew what had happened to my baby previously was not my doing. But she couldn't explain it. No one even listened to her, and it was only but so much she can say in her position. So I called her. And I remember calling her and she said to me, get to my office right now. And I remember bringing my baby there and she said, I remember this like it was yesterday. And it was like a year later. And she said, I told her what I thought it was. I said, the Velcro, you know, because she had told me before, don't put clothes on the babies because they're sweating too much at night. It's giving them heat rashes and everything. So she told me about this divider to keep them on their side. And I said, I figured it out. The divider is Velcro. So as they're kicking at night, the Velcro is rubbing against the leg because it was in the same exact spot. It looked the same exact way. And I brought it with me and she looked and she said, oh my God.
Wow.
And she said, I'm taking a picture and I'm documenting this right now. And she did, and I went on with my life.
Wow. Wow. But you had that support, you know,
Yes.
you had her on your side to listen to you and to validate what you were saying. You've raised 5 African-American sons. What some challenges you've faced navigating education, the law enforcement and support systems for your boys? Can you explain what that whole journey has been like?
Yeah, so for me, it was advocating for my boys nonstop against making sure that they get a fair education, fighting to make sure that there was no bias when it comes to policing, or just making sure that their dignity was kept when we needed social services. So it was a fight every single day. I never stopped fighting. I'm still fighting. And I will continue to fight, not just for mine, but for others, because we're looked at in a way that's just not true. And some people don't understand that life is challenging and life be lifing, right? And without the supports and the love from the people around you, you tend to break. And I don't want anyone to feel like their pain has broken them, but I need them to know that your pain has made you a human. What you feeling is accurate. What you feeling is correct. Like, it's normal, right? And there are solutions to every problem.
But to have your person fighting for you and advocating for you is just a blessing to have. And I know that that's what your role will be working with us and in our families. You said people should have their dignity and pride even when seeking help.
Yep.
How do you uphold that principle through your nonprofit? Just ask Sammy.
Yeah, so I constantly remind individuals that your pain and what you're going through has not made you weak. All it's doing is making you strong to be able to navigate around a broken system. Systems are broken and there's a way out. So I continue to encourage them that you will come out of this. And I can say that with pride and confidence because I did, right? And I didn't just overcome the challenges within DCF, but I overcame many challenges that you'll read in a book one day. But you know, the fact of the matter is you can be an overcomer. It gets exhausting. It does, but you cannot lose fight. You have to fight and fight and fight until you get the results that you want to see.
And that's what you'll be doing is encouraging them to keep up that fight and to advocate for themselves. Your journey with DCF began not as an employee, but as a young mom involved with the system. How was it balancing school? I know you had a great support system with your mom and, you know, your family, but how was it balancing all of that? Because, you know, you're going through your own, you know, milestones as a 15-year-old. Like we just talked about the prom and all of those milestones. How did you balance that with work and school and stay healthy?
I don't know. It was tough. It was tough. I remember in school, I had this friend, a friend of mine, and I remember her dad made sure to pick me up every day for school, right? Because they used to tell us we have to walk, and I thought it was a long ways, and I got a book bag, and I'm carrying a baby. But he would pick me up from school. His daughter would carry my book bag for me. And if we wasn't in the same classes, she made sure to come and check up on me. And after school, we made sure to walk home together, right? It was very challenging, but I feel like the support I had around me reminded me that I'm no longer doing this for me, but I have to do it for the baby that I'm about to bring into this world. And, you know, I tell my parents all the time, you don't give up, right? But you keep striving every single day because children didn't ask to be here. And it is our job to make sure that we do everything within our might and our power to make sure that they see and know that you can be an overcomer too. Like, you're going to face these challenges, but it's okay.
And you
it's
can do
okay. You can do it.
You can do it. As a longtime member of our state advisory council, you've already had a help in shaping the system from the inside. What are the biggest misconceptions you think that families have about DCF?
Yeah, so families think that DCF is here to just come in, take your children, and just disrupt your life, while also DCF thinks that families just don't care, right? And I would continue to remind both that that's not the case, right? It's much more complex than that. And if everyone can stop assuming and just sit and listen, we would be better off.
Absolutely. So, you know, in your first weeks, you're reviewing cases and policy and on conference calls and talking with families and
First week.
and you're, you know, at this trusted level.
Yes.
You know, what is a day in the life like for you now at DCF? You know, what are your job responsibilities? What are we tasking you with?
Yeah, so my day is busy. It is very busy. But it's interesting. It's interesting to know that my perspective and voice does matter. So yes, I am on the calls with families who are calling and complaining about their social worker, about the supervisors, about the department, everything they can think of. And my job is to try to look at the whole picture, right? And to figure out, is there a gap in something that we did, or how can I help this parent see it in a different view, right? So a parent comes in angry, what do you do, right? So I always stop and think, what would I have wanted somebody to do when it was me? Instead of telling me I was young and in love and stupid, and because these was the words that were spoken over my life when I was going through it, what would I wish they have said? And I take a moment before speaking to any family and ponder over that to make sure that I give them what I wish I had. So it comes very exciting. And I have to say, the few parents that I have spoken to in this week, I think we have made some good progress. But I also want to say I'm very grateful for Kim Meiseglam, who's my supervisor, and the commissioner, who supports my judgment, who really trusts me and know, like, your voice does matter. And they remind me of that every day.
And that must be such a great feeling.
It
I
is.
mean, your life has come full circle.
Yes.
You know, it really has. And when you meet with these families, do you introduce yourself as a parent with lived experience,
I do.
so they know that you're walking alongside of them in this journey?
So I introduce myself as a parent with lived expertise. I would give a brief of my story and what that means. I don't want to just assume that they know what that means. So I give a brief of my story and letting them know that I once was you, right? I might not have came into the system the same way you did, but I came into the system. And I understand culture, right? Like, DCF back then didn't look at culture, right? So I let them know I understand, and I hear you. I let them speak. I don't care how frustrated they are. I remember saying to it, like, it's okay. Say it exactly how you feel it, and it's okay. I don't want them to feel like they have to downplay the emotions because they don't want me to feel like they're crazy. And now, oh my God, I won't be able to get my kids back because how they're viewed. No. That's not, I need to hear and see what you're exactly feeling so I know how to move forward.
Right. Well, we're so lucky to have you. Before we close today, and I have so many more questions for you, and I told you this is going to go by so fast. If you could open a door of hope and healing for a family that you're going to be working with, what would you want them to see behind that door?
Hope. It goes right with the topic put in there, right? Hope, right? Like you can heal and there is hope. So many think that just because of where you come from or what you've gone through, that's just it. That is not how your story ends. It is up to you to paint the picture every single day of what you want your story and your journey to look like. And you can do that.
Well, it's been such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Our families and our agency is truly blessed to have you seated right beside us at the table and helping us improve our work and do our best work. So thank you for joining us.
No problem.
I'll have you back on after you've been here maybe a year. So I thank our guest for her honesty, for her power, and for her purpose. And she reminds us that systems can change when people with lived experience take the lead, and that healing is possible even when the journey begins with pain. To our viewers, I hope you felt what I felt today, inspired and challenged and reminded that every family deserves dignity, to have a voice, and a fair chance. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Nutmeg TV has been providing community television for over 30 years. We needed some studio upgrades, and Ion Bank believed in us. As a result of Ion Bank's financial help, we've been able to help others move on in a field that's difficult to get experience in. You're working with partners who understand who you are, and Ion Bank does that. They walk with us every day. It's community banking at its best.
Step into our store and discover a stunning array of dancewear. Introducing Dancingly Yours, your one-stop shop for all things dance and delight for ages 2 to 92. From tiny tutus to energetic tap shoes, our store is a treasure trove of dance essentials. At Dancingly Yours, we offer an extensive collection of dancewear and accessories that cater to all styles and levels. We carry top brands and the latest fashion trends. From ballet to hip-hop, lyrical to jazz, ballroom to liturgical, as well as gymnastics, you'll find the best selection right here at Dancingly Yours. But we're not just a store. We're a community that celebrates the joy of dance. Our expert team is passionate about dance, just like you. So we're here to assist you in finding the perfect fit. And the best part, Dancingly Yours offers competitive pricing in-store and online. Dancingly Yours, easy to get to, and worth the trip from anywhere, right on Route 10 in Plainville.